The scent of cinnamon and pine needles filled my studio as I hung the last ornament on my makeshift Christmas tree, really just a collection of my paint-splattered easels arranged in a triangle draped with twinkling lights. I stepped back, admiring how the golden glow transformed my usually chaotic workspace into something magical. This would be perfect for tomorrow's family Christmas gathering, where I'd finally show them my art wasn't just a hobby. My name is Alina, and I'd spent the last 3 years building my dream, this small but vibrant art studio in downtown Boston, far from my family's mansion in Beacon Hill. The space wasn't much, but it was mine. My phone buzzed. Mom. Alina, dear, your father and I need to speak with you. Now. Mom, it's Christmas Eve. I'm preparing for tomorrow's. This can't wait. We're outside your studio. My stomach dropped at her tone. I hurried downstairs, where my parents' black Mercedes stuck out like a sore thumb among the neighborhood's beat-up Hondas and Toyotas. Darling, Mom said as I opened the door, her Hermes scarf wrapped tight against the December chill. This really can't go on. Dad stood behind her, his usual commanding presence somehow more severe in the dim streetlight. Come inside, I said, leading them up the narrow staircase. I've decorated for tomorrow. I thought maybe we could have the family gathering here this year, show everyone what I've been working on. That's precisely what we need to discuss, Dad cut in, his voice sharp. This experiment of yours has gone far enough. I switched on the studio lights, illuminating my latest pieces, large, bold canvases exploring themes of freedom and constraint. Mom visibly winced at a particularly vibrant abstract. The Stevensons asked about you at the club yesterday, Mom said, perching herself on the edge of my paint-stained couch. I had to lie about where you were. Do you know how humiliating that was? I don't understand. I'm working, creating art. Creating embarrassment, Dad interrupted. The Rice name means something in this city. We can't have our daughter playing artist in some rundown neighborhood. Playing artist? My voice cracked. I sold 3 pieces last month. I'm having a show in February. Enough. Dad pulled out his phone, showing me a real estate listing. We've found a buyer for this space, above market value. The money will help you start fresh, perhaps in marketing or PR. Something respectable. The room started spinning. You're trying to sell my studio? You can't. The lease is in my name. We've spoken to the building owner, Mom said softly, as if gentleness could soften the blow. He's willing to break your lease, given our influence. This is my life, I whispered, touching one of my canvases. My work. It's time to grow up, Alina, Dad said. You have until New Year's to decide. Either sell this place and come back to the family business, or what? Mom stood, straightening her Chanel jacket. Or we'll have to distance ourselves completely. No more trust fund, no family connections, no support. You'll be on your own. The Christmas lights twinkled mockingly in the silence that followed. You're asking me to choose between my passion and my family? My voice was steady, surprising even myself. We're asking you to choose a proper future, Dad corrected. The Rice name. Is that all you care about? The family name? Don't be dramatic, darling, Mom sighed. We're trying to help you. I looked around my studio, at the paint-splattered floors, the half-finished canvases, the Christmas decorations I'd hung with such hope just hours ago. Then at my parents, standing there in their expensive clothes, trying to erase everything I'd built. Get out. Excuse me? Dad's face reddened. I said get out, both of you. If you can't support who I am, what I love, then maybe we shouldn't be family at all. Alina, think about what you're saying, Mom pleaded. I have thought about it every day for the past 3 years while you've been ashamed of me. Now please, leave. They left without another word, the door closing with a final click. I stood there, surrounded by my art, my dreams, my rebellion, until the tears finally came. My phone buzzed again. Yolanda, my best friend. Still on for Christmas cookies tonight? Through blurry eyes, I typed, change of plans. Bring wine instead. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door, pausing to look back at my makeshift Christmas tree. The lights still twinkled, but now they seemed to shine with a different purpose. Not celebration, but defiance. 3 months after Christmas, I was still finding tinsel in odd corners of my studio. Each sparkly reminder felt like a tiny knife to the gut. I hadn't heard from my parents since that night, though their ultimatum had been carried out with surgical precision. Bank accounts closed, credit cards cancelled, my name quietly removed from every family registry. Earth to Alina! Yolanda waved her hand in front of my face, splattering drops of coffee on my workspace. You're doing that 1,000-yard stare again. Sorry, I mumbled, turning back to my canvas. Just thinking about rent. Stop. Yolanda put down her mug and grabbed my shoulders. You sold 2 pieces last week. Rent is covered. Now focus on finishing these for the spring showcase. I nodded, picking up my brush again. The piece I was working on was different from my usual style. Darker, more intense. Raw emotion bleeding through every brush stroke. Holy shit, Yolanda whispered, stepping back to look at the canvas. This is intense? Like looking straight into someone's soul while it's breaking? Too much? No, it's perfect. People are going to... The studio door opened, cutting her off. A man in an impeccably tailored suit stood in the doorway, looking oddly at home despite the paint-splattered surroundings. I apologize for interrupting, he said, stepping inside. The gallery downstairs said I might find Alina here. That's me, I said, wiping my hands on my already stained jeans. Harrison Matthews. He extended his hand. I saw your piece, Fractured Inheritance, at the Small Works show last month. My heart stopped. Harrison Matthews was one of the most influential art collectors in New England. I'd read about him in every major art publication. I've been following your work since then, he continued, walking around my studio. Your evolution over the past few months is remarkable. He stopped in front of my current piece, studying it intently. There's pain here, he said quietly, but also defiance, strength. He turned to face me. Would you tell me about it? It's personal, I managed. The best art always is, he smiled. That's why I'm here. I'm curating a special exhibition at the Gardner Museum next month. Theme is breaking patterns. I'd like to feature your work. Yolanda squeaked behind me. The Gardner? I breathed. But that's where your mother hosts her annual charity gala. Harrison's eyes twinkled. Yes, I'm aware of your connection to the Rice family. In fact, I find it adds a fascinating layer to your work. My hands started shaking. They wouldn't want me there. Art isn't about want, Ms. Rice. It's about need. And right now, the art world needs voices like yours, authentic, unflinching, real. He pulled out a business card, placing it on my workbench. Think about it. The exhibition opens May 15th. I'd need at least 3 pieces, including this one. He gestured to my current work. Your family's gala is the following week, I believe? I nodded, unable to speak. Perfect timing, wouldn't you say? He headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Alina, don't let them dim your light. Some of the greatest art comes from breaking free of gilded cages. After he left, Yolanda and I stood in stunned silence. Did that just happen? She finally whispered. I can't do it, I said, sinking onto my paint-stained couch. Show my work there, they'll see it as an attack. Good, Yolanda sat beside me. They deserve it. They tried to buy your silence, your compliance. Show them what happens when you try to cage an artist. I picked up Harrison's card, running my finger over the embossed lettering. It would destroy them, I murmured. Socially, professionally. Mom's been on the museum's board for decades, and now you have the chance to show them exactly what they tried to throw away. Yolanda grabbed my shoulders again. This isn't just an opportunity, Alina. It's justice. I stood up, walking to my easel. The painting stared back at me, all sharp edges and bleeding colors, beauty born from pain. You're right, I said, picking up my brush. But if I'm going to do this, I'm going to need bigger canvases. Yolanda grinned, already pulling out her phone. I'll call Marco at the supply store, and then we're getting champagne. Lots of it. As she dialed, I studied my work with new eyes. Each brushstroke now felt like a word in a letter I'd been trying to write for months. Maybe it was time to stop hiding my truth behind polite silence. My phone buzzed, a text from Harrison. The world is ready for your voice. Are you ready to use it? I took a deep breath and typed back one word. Yes. More red, Harrison said, studying my latest piece. The emotion's there, but it needs to bleed more. I mixed cadmium red with a touch of burnt umber, letting the colors swirl together like wine. Over the past month, my studio had transformed into a battlefield of massive canvases, each one larger and more confrontational than the last. Better, he nodded as I added the darker shade. Now tell me again what this piece represents. The suffocation of expectations, I said, stepping back. The weight of a name that feels more like a prison than a legacy. Good. Make them feel that weight. The studio door creaked open, and a familiar figure stepped in. Uncle Sullivan, his silver hair disheveled as always, looking completely out of place in his worn leather jacket among my pristine canvases. Well, he whistled. Looks like little Alina's not so little anymore. Uncle Sully? I nearly dropped my brush. How did you... Your friend Yolanda told me where to find you. He approached slowly, taking in each painting. Reese, your mother. She's been telling everyone you're finding yourself in Europe. Harrison raised an eyebrow. And you didn't believe that? Please, Sullivan scoffed. I've been the family disappointment for 30 years. I know what exile looks like. He turned to me. Though you're handling it with considerably more style than I did, Mr. Matthews, I said, this is my Uncle Sullivan. He's the only one in the family who ever supported my art. Ah, another black sheep? Harrison smiled. Those are always my favorite members of any family. Sullivan stopped in front of my centerpiece, a massive canvas depicting a golden cage with broken bars, birds escaping into a blood-red sky. They're talking about you, you know, he said quietly, at their precious social clubs. Your cousin Genesis keeps dropping hints about your unfortunate choices. Genesis? I hadn't thought about my cousin in months. What's she saying? Nothing directly, just enough to make sure everyone knows the Rice family is disappointed. He turned to face me. But that's not why I'm here. From his jacket, he pulled out a worn, leather-bound book. Your grandmother's journal. Found it while cleaning out my attic. Mom's mother? I took the book carefully. Read it, he said, especially the entries from 1962. Might help with... He gestured to my paintings. All this. I opened the journal to a random page, my grandmother's elegant handwriting filling the yellowed paper. They say a woman's duty is to uphold the family name. But what if the name itself is built on silence? She wanted to be a writer, Sullivan explained. Wrote 3 novels before your grandfather made her stop. Said it wasn't proper for his wife to tell stories. Harrison stepped forward, suddenly interested. Did she ever publish? Under a pen name? Sullivan nodded. After he died. Won some awards too, but by then Reese was grown. Already married to Bennett. Already obsessed with being proper. He touched the journal gently. Your grandmother died thinking she'd failed as a mother because Reese turned out exactly as your grandfather wanted. My hands shook as I held the journal. Why are you showing me this? Because you need to understand this fight you're fighting, it's not new, it's in your blood. He looked at my paintings again. But you've got something your grandmother didn't have. You've got guts, kid, and timing. Harrison cleared his throat. The exhibition opens in 2 weeks. The gala's the week after. I know, Sullivan grinned. Already got my ticket. Wouldn't miss it for the world. They'll try to stop it, I said. Once they find out, let them try. Sullivan's voice hardened. I've watched that family crush too many dreams. It's time someone showed them what happens when art refuses to be silenced. He headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Alina? Genesis is having lunch at Stephanie's tomorrow. Noon. Just thought you might want to know. After he left, Harrison and I stood in silence, looking at my grandmother's journal. Well, Harrison finally said, I believe we just found the missing piece for your exhibition. What do you mean? Your grandmother's words combined with your art. He gestured expansively. It's not just your story anymore. It's a legacy of rebellion. I opened the journal again, reading another entry. Art isn't proper. Art isn't polite. Art is truth. And truth is always dangerous to those who build their lives on lies. I need more canvas, I said, already reaching for my phone. And I need to make a lunch reservation for tomorrow. Harrison smiled. Now that's the fire I've been looking for. Show them what happens when you try to cage 2 generations of artists. I looked at my paintings, at my grandmother's journal, at the future suddenly opening up before me. No, I said. I'll show them what happens when the cage finally breaks. Stephanie's hadn't changed. Same white tablecloths, same soft jazz, same wealthy clientele pretending not to watch each other over their overpriced salads. I spotted Genesis immediately, her perfect blonde hair catching the sunlight as she typed on her phone. Well, look who's still in Boston, I said, sliding into the seat across from her. Genesis jumped, nearly dropping her phone. Alina? I thought you were in Europe. Did Mom tell you that? I signaled the waiter. Martini? Extra dirty. She'll have another glass of her rosé. How did you know what I was drinking? Some things never change, I smiled. Like how you always meet your gossip sources here at noon on Tuesdays. Genesis shifted uncomfortably. I don't know what you're... Please, you've been dropping hints about my unfortunate choices all over town. At least have the courage to say it to my face. The waiter brought our drinks. Genesis took a large sip of hers. Aunt Reese is devastated, she finally said. You're breaking her heart. By following my passion? By refusing to be another empty socialite? By embarrassing the family? Do you know what people are saying? Actually, I don't. Tell me. Genesis leaned forward, lowering her voice. They're saying you had some kind of breakdown, that you're living in some dirty artist commune doing God knows what. I laughed, loud enough to make nearby diners turn. Is that the best you could come up with? It's not funny, Alina. The gala's coming up, and everyone's asking if you'll be there. Aunt Reese had to tell the board you're dealing with personal issues. Personal issues? I took a sip of my martini. Like finally being honest about who I am? Like throwing away everything your parents gave you for some hobby. Hobby? I pulled out my phone, showing her Harrison's latest email. Is that what you call being featured at the Gardner? Genesis's face went pale as she read. The Gardner? But that's where Mom's hosting the gala. Yeah, funny coincidence, isn't it? You can't, she whispered. It would destroy her. Like she tried to destroy me? I stood up, dropping money on the table. You know what the difference is between you and me, Genesis? I actually have talent, real talent, not just a trust fund and a good name. Wait, Genesis grabbed my arm. There's something you should know about the gala. What about it? Aunt Reese, she's announcing her nomination for the museum's board presidency that night. It's practically guaranteed, unless something embarrasses her? I smiled. Like her disowned daughter having an exhibition in the same museum? Please, Alina, she's worked so hard for this. So have I. I pulled my arm free, and unlike her, I earned every bit of it. You're just doing this for revenge. No, I said, gathering my coat. I'm doing this because I'm an artist. The revenge is just a bonus. I was halfway to the door when Genesis called out, "They'll never forgive you for this." I turned back. Maybe, but I'll never forgive them for making me choose between their love and my truth. Outside, my phone buzzed. A text from Harrison. "How did lunch go?" "Better than expected," I replied. "Genesis just gave me exactly what I needed." Which is? The perfect timing for my exhibition's opening night. Back at the studio, I found Uncle Sullivan waiting, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Heard you had lunch with Genesis," he said. "How's our little informant?" "Terrified." I picked up my brush, facing my largest canvas yet. "She told me about Mom's board nomination." "Ah," he nodded. "The crown jewel in Reese's social climbing career." "Did you know?" "Why do you think I showed up now?" He grinned. "Sometimes the best revenge is just perfect timing." I started mixing colors, deep blues and violent purples. "This isn't just about revenge anymore, Sully. I found Grandma's last novel in her journal. The one about the woman who burned down her husband's social club?" "No," I smiled, making the first bold stroke across the canvas. "The one about her daughter, who grew up to be exactly what her father wanted, and exactly what her mother feared." Sullivan watched me paint in silence for a moment. "Your mother never read it, you know." "I know." I stepped back, studying the emerging image. "But she's about to see it, all of it, in living color. They'll try to stop you," he warned, "once they realize what's coming." "Let them try." I dipped my brush in red. Some stories need to be told, even if they burn everything down in the process. "And you're ready for that fire?" I thought of Genesis's face when she read Harrison's email, of my grandmother's hidden novels, of my mother's carefully constructed world of appearances. "I'm not just ready," I said, making another bold stroke. "I'm the one lighting the match." "It's done," I whispered, stepping back from the final piece. 3 days before the exhibition opening, and my hands were trembling from exhaustion and too much coffee, Harrison circled the massive canvas slowly, his footsteps echoing in the pre-dawn quiet of my studio. The painting towered over us, 12 feet of carefully controlled chaos. At its center, a woman in a golden dress stood in a shattered mirror, her reflection fracturing into hundreds of smaller images, each showing a different truth. "This is it," he said finally. "This is the one we'll unveil at the opening." My phone buzzed. Another frantic text from Genesis. "Please call me. Mom knows something's happening. She's making calls." "Let her call," Yolanda said, reading over my shoulder. "What can she do? The exhibition's already been announced." The studio door burst open, making us all jump. My mother stood there, perfect as always in her Chanel suit, looking wildly out of place among the paint-splattered walls. "So it's true," she said, her voice tight. "You're really doing this." "Mom!" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You can't be here." "Can't be here?" She stepped inside, her heels clicking on the concrete floor. "I'm your mother. I have every right." "No," I cut her off. "You lost that right when you tried to buy my silence." She stopped, finally seeing the paintings around her. Her face went pale as she took in each image, the broken cage, the shattered mirrors, the words from my grandmother's journal woven through every canvas. "You can't show these," she whispered. "Do you have any idea what this will do?" "To your reputation?" I moved between her and the centerpiece. "Your precious board nomination?" "To our family." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Whatever point you're trying to make. This isn't about making a point." Harrison stepped forward. "This is about art. Real art, the kind that tells truth." "And who are you to judge what truth is?" Mom turned on him. "You have no idea what our family—" "He knows exactly what this family is," I interrupted, because I showed him, in every brushstroke, every color, every hidden message. "Hidden message?" Her eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" I picked up my grandmother's journal from my workbench. Did you ever wonder why Grandma spent so much time in her study? What she was writing all those years? Don't! Her voice shook. Don't you dare bring her into this. She brought herself into this 30 years ago. I opened the journal to the marked page. When she wrote about watching her daughter become everything she feared. Stop it. My Reese, I read aloud. So desperate to be what they want, she's forgotten who she is. My beautiful girl, trading her soul for social standing. I said stop. She grabbed for the journal, but I pulled it away. The exhibition opens in 3 days, I said. Every piece tells a story. Grandma's, mine, yours, about women who silence themselves to please others. I'm calling our lawyers. She reached for her phone. This is defamation. It's art, Harrison cut in. Protected speech. And considering the press already has the preview materials. Mom froze. What press? Boston Globe, Art News, Forbes. Harrison smiled. They're particularly interested in the family connection, the prodigal daughter's triumphant return, exposing the dark side of Boston's elite society. You wouldn't, she whispered. Watch me. She looked around the studio one last time, her eyes lingering on the centerpiece. For a moment I saw something flicker across her face, recognition, maybe even understanding. Your father will never forgive this, she said quietly. I know. We'll be ruined. No, I stepped closer. You'll just finally be seen, the real you, not the perfect facade you've built. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. That woman in the painting, in the gold dress? Yes, she looks like me, at your age. She is you, Mom, the you that existed before you let them cage you. She didn't respond, just closed the door softly behind her. The studio fell silent. Well, Yolanda finally said. That was intense. It's not over, Harrison warned. She'll try something before the opening. Let her. I turned back to the centerpiece, touching the still wet paint gently. Some things need to be broken before they can be fixed. My phone buzzed again. Uncle Sullivan. Just heard Reese was at your studio. You okay? Better than okay, I typed back. The final piece is done. And? I looked at the painting, at the woman in the golden dress, at all the fractured truths finally coming to light. And it's beautiful, I replied. Terrifyingly beautiful. The Gardner Museum hummed with anticipation. Through the gallery windows, I watched Boston's elite arrive in their designer clothes and practiced smiles, air-kissing and exchanging pleasantries as if this were just another opening night. They have no idea what's coming, do they? Yolanda adjusted my black dress, a far cry from the paint-stained clothes I usually wore. 5 minutes until doors open, Harrison announced, appearing beside us. The press is already asking about the covered centerpiece. Let them ask. I touched the massive velvet drape hiding my final piece. Some surprises are worth waiting for. The gallery doors opened, and the crowd flowed in like an expensive tide. I recognized faces from my old life, board members, family friends, social climbers who'd once smiled at me at country club brunches. Now they whispered behind their champagne glasses, pointing discreetly at my paintings. Darling, Uncle Sullivan's voice boomed across the room. He wrapped me in a bear hug, smelling of leather and good scotch. They're all here. Every last one of them. Mom and Dad? Back corner, Reese is doing her best to pretend this isn't happening, but Bennett looks like he's about to burst a blood vessel. I glanced where he indicated. My parents stood rigid, barely touching their champagne. Mom wore her armor, a perfectly tailored Oscar de la Renta gown, while Dad's jaw clenched visibly, even from across the room. Ladies and gentlemen, Harrison's voice cut through the murmurs. If you'll gather round, we're about to begin. The crowd shifted, forming a loose semicircle around the covered centerpiece. I saw Genesis slip in late, her face pale as she took in the other paintings. Tonight, Harrison continued, we celebrate not just art, but truth. the kind of truth that often hides behind family names and social expectations. He gestured to me. Alina? My heels clicked against the marble floor as I stepped forward. The crowd's silence felt heavy, expectant. These paintings tell a story, I said, my voice carrying in the hushed space. Not just my story, but the story of every person who's ever been told to be less, to be quiet, to be proper. I met my mother's eyes across the room. It's about the cages we build, the masks we wear, and what happens when we finally break free. I nodded to Harrison. Two assistants stepped forward, gripping the velvet drape. Mother, I said clearly, this one's for you. The drape fell. Gasps echoed through the gallery. In the stunning silence that followed, I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath. The painting towered over everyone, 12 feet of carefully controlled chaos. The woman in the golden dress, my mother's younger self, stood among shattered mirrors, each fragment reflecting a different truth. A young girl writing poetry, a woman crying behind closed doors, a daughter becoming her father's perfect creation. And woven through it all, in delicate gold script, were my grandmother's words. The greatest tragedy is not the breaking of a heart, but the silencing of a soul. Oh my God, Genesis whispered loudly. Those are Aunt Reese's journals. No, my mother's voice cut through the silence. She stepped forward, her hands shaking. Those are my mother's words, the ones I pretended not to hear, the ones I tried so hard to forget. The crowd parted as she approached the painting. Up close, the details were unmistakable. The exact shade of her favorite childhood dress, the diary she used to hide under her mattress, the dreams she packed away to become the perfect society wife. You had no right, she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. I had every right, I replied softly. Just like Grandma had every right to write her novels. Just like I have every right to paint my truth. Dad stepped forward, his face dark with rage. This ends now. I'll buy every painting. Name your price. They're not for sale, Harrison interjected smoothly. In fact, they've already been acquired by the museum's permanent collection. The whispers grew louder. Mom swayed slightly, reaching for support. Reese? A board member approached cautiously. Perhaps we should discuss the nomination. No need, my mother said, her voice suddenly clear. She turned to face the crowd, her spine straightening. I'm withdrawing my name. Mom? Genesis gasped. It's time for some truth, isn't it? Mom looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. My daughter isn't the disappointment here. I am. I disappointed myself, my mother, and worst of all, I disappointed the artist my daughter became. She touched the painting gently, tracing one of the written lines. The silencing of a soul, she murmured. Then, louder, well, no more silence, not tonight. The gallery erupted in chaos, but all I could see was my mother's face, transformed by something that looked surprisingly like freedom. Uncle Sullivan appeared at my side, grinning. Now that, he whispered, is what I call a masterpiece. The aftermath of the exhibition opening felt like the eye of a hurricane. Reporters swarmed the gallery, cameras flashing, questions flying. Dad had stormed out, followed by most of his business associates. Genesis hovered uncertainly between groups, her social butterfly wings finally clipped. Ms. Rice, a reporter thrust a microphone toward me. Your exhibition seems to be a direct critique of Boston's elite society. Was that your intention? Before I could answer, my mother stepped forward. My daughter, she said clearly, has done what I never had the courage to do. She told the truth. The reporters turned to her like sharks sensing blood. Mrs. Rice, how do you respond to the personal nature of these paintings? Personal? Mom laughed, a sound I hadn't heard in years. Art should be personal. It should hurt. It should heal. My daughter's work does both. Harrison appeared at my side. The Times is calling it A searing indictment of generational trauma disguised as social obligation. Disguised? Uncle Sullivan snorted, joining us. Looks pretty damn obvious to me. A commotion near the entrance drew our attention. My father had returned, this time with a man in an expensive suit clutching a leather briefcase. That's enough, Dad announced, his voice cutting through the chaos. This exhibition is over. My lawyer has prepared an injunction. On what grounds? Harrison stepped forward, smiling pleasantly. Defamation, invasion of privacy. Take your pick. Everything here is either artistic interpretation or documented fact, Harrison replied. The museum's lawyers have already reviewed. I don't care about your lawyers. Dad's face reddened. This is family business. No, Mom's voice rang out. This is art, and it's staying. Dad turned to her, shocked. Reese, you can't be serious. After what she's done to us. What she's done? Mom walked to the centerpiece, gesturing at the fractured reflections. Look at it, Bennett. Really look. This isn't just about Alina, it's about me, about my mother, about every woman in this family who was told to be less than she was. Your mother? Dad scoffed. What does she have to do with everything? Mom pulled a small book from her clutch, my grandmother's journal. Did you know she published novels under a pen name? Did you know she won awards? She opened the journal. Did you know she wrote about me? The gallery had gone silent, everyone watching this unexpected drama unfold. I found her journals after she died, Mom continued, but I was too afraid to read them, too afraid to see myself through her eyes. She looked at me. Until now. Mrs. Rice, another reporter called out, are you saying you support your daughter's exhibition? Support it? Mom smiled, a real smile that made her look years younger. I'm proud of it, proud of her. For the first time in my life, I'm seeing the truth about our family, about myself, and yes, it hurts, but it's beautiful too. Dad's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Rice, if your wife isn't willing to support the injunction, to hell with the injunction, Dad snapped. Reese, think about what you're doing. The board position is less important than my daughter. Mom turned to the crowd. Yes, I'm withdrawing from the board nomination because it's time for new voices, new perspectives. It's time for truth. Genesis suddenly stepped forward. Aunt Reese is right. She faced the reporters. This family, we've all been living behind masks. Alina's just the first one brave enough to break hers. The reporters surged forward again, questions overlapping. Through the chaos, I felt a hand slip into mine. Mom. I'm sorry, she whispered, for everything, for trying to make you smaller to fit our world. Mom. No, let me finish. She squeezed my hand. Your grandmother would have loved these paintings. She would have loved the artist you've become. Dad stood alone now, his lawyer already retreating. He looked lost, a king watching his kingdom crumble. Bennett, Mom called to him, it's over. The perfect family, the perfect image. It's all over, and thank God for that. He left without a word, but this time no one followed. Harrison cleared his throat. The Boston Globe wants an interview with both of you. Mom looked at me questioningly. Together? I nodded, feeling something shift between us, like a door opening or a cage breaking. Together. As the reporters gathered around us, I caught Uncle Sullivan's eye. He raised his champagne glass in a silent toast, grinning like a proud conspirator. So, the Globe reporter began, tell us about the woman in the golden dress. Mom and I looked at each other, then at the painting that had started it all, the truth teller, the mirror breaker, the story we'd both needed to tell. Well, we said in unison, and for the first time in years we both started laughing. Spring sunlight streamed through my studio windows as I added the final touches to my newest piece. The door creaked open and Mom stepped in, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a familiar leather-bound journal. Still using Grandma's words? She asked, setting down the cups. They feel like mine now, too. I stepped back from the canvas. What do you think? The painting showed two women at a writing desk. One older, one younger. Their faces reflected in the same mirror. Unlike my previous work, this one felt lighter, more hopeful. She would have loved it, Mom said, touching the canvas gently. Both the painting and the gallery. We'd converted Dad's old downtown office building into an art gallery and writing space, renamed it the Storyteller's Studio. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Have you heard from him? I asked, accepting the coffee. Bennett's in London, Mom shrugged. Apparently there's less scrutiny there, though Genesis tells me he's actually reading your interviews. And how is our favorite reformed socialite? Mom laughed. Genesis is thriving at art school. Who knew she had such talent for photography? Though she says documentary work is way harder than Instagram. The studio door burst open again as Yolanda rushed in, waving her phone. You're trending again. The Times piece about female artists breaking family traditions just dropped. Show me, Mom and I said together, then laughed at our synchronicity. As Yolanda pulled up the article, Harrison appeared in the doorway. Ladies, the writing workshop starts in 10 minutes. We've got a full house, including 3 society wives, Yolanda whispered dramatically. Apparently, your mother's writing group is becoming quite scandalous. Mom straightened her shoulders, a gesture I'd seen countless times at charity galas, but now it looked different, proud rather than proper. Well, scandal is better than silence, isn't it? Speaking of silence, Harrison said, Sullivan's downstairs with some interesting news. Uncle Sullivan bounded up the stairs moments later, his leather jacket now adorned with paint stains from helping around the studio. You'll never believe what I found in the old family storage unit. He pulled out a manuscript, yellowed with age. Your grandmother's last novel, the one she never published. Mom's hands shook as she took it. The Price of Proper, she read, by Elizabeth Grace. Her pen name, I said softly. There's a note inside, Sullivan pointed. Dated the week before she died. Mom opened it carefully, her voice catching as she read, To my Reese, and to her daughter, and to every daughter who follows, may you find the courage to tell your stories, paint your truths, and break whatever cages they build around you. The world needs your voice more than it needs your silence. The studio fell quiet, broken only by the sounds of aspiring artists and writers gathering downstairs. Well, Harrison said, checking his watch, shall we tell them they're about to be part of literary history? Wait, I said, turning to Mum. Read it to them. Grandma's novel. Start today. Me? Mum clutched the manuscript. But I'm not... You're exactly who should read it. I took her hand. The daughter who found her voice again. She looked at the manuscript, then at my painting of the 2 women at the desk. On one condition. Name it. You paint while I read. Let them see both forms of storytelling. Deal. As we headed downstairs, Yolanda nudged me. Look at us, running an arts collective in your father's old temple of capitalism. If that's not poetic justice... The workshop space was packed. Women of all ages looked up expectantly, notebooks and laptops open, some with paintbrushes already in hand. Ladies, Mom said, stepping to the front, today we're going to talk about legacy, not the kind that's handed down in trust funds or social standings, but the kind that flows through ink and paint and courage. She held up the manuscript. This is my mother's story, and my daughter's story, but most importantly, it could be your story too. I set up my easel beside her, mixing colors that felt like freedom. Chapter 1, Mom began reading, her voice strong and clear. The day I decided to disappoint my family was the day I finally began to live. As she read, I painted, and around us, dozens of women began to write and draw, each finding their own way to break their silence. Through the windows, I could see the Boston skyline, the same view Dad once used to survey his domain. But now it looked different. Now it looked like possibility. Uncle Sullivan leaned against the wall, grinning. Now this, he said softly, this is what revolution looks like. I smiled, adding a bright streak of gold to my canvas. No, I replied. This is what freedom looks like. And in that moment, surrounded by art and truth and broken cages, we were all exactly where we needed to be.